For millennia, humanity has embraced a single version of this ancient tale, an idyllic paradise, a forbidden act, and a serpent condemned as the great deceiver. This story has shaped religious doctrine, cultural beliefs, and moral philosophy, reinforcing the idea that obedience is virtue and curiosity is sin. But what if Eden was never a paradise? What if the serpent was not a villain, but a messenger? And what if the true nature of the God who cast Adam and Eve into exile has been hidden in plain sight? Before the biblical account, the ancient Sumerians recorded their own creation story, one filled with celestial beings, powerful rulers, and a battle over knowledge. The Anunnaki were divided. Some sought to control humanity, while others sought to awaken them. Among them was Enki, a figure whose role mirrors that of the serpent, offering wisdom not as a curse, but as liberation. If this challenges what you thought you knew, stay with me, because we're about to uncover the truth buried beneath centuries of deception. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next revelation. And if you're ready to awaken, drop a comment with the number 7 below. Let's begin. Long before the biblical account, the ancient Sumerians recorded their own version of creation, one that spoke of powerful celestial beings, the Anunnaki, who shaped early humanity and oversaw their progress. These deities, much like the figures in Genesis, were divided in their intentions. Some wished to keep humanity subservient, content within the boundaries of their limited knowledge, while others sought to empower them, to grant them wisdom, understanding, and self-awareness. Among them was Enki, the god of wisdom and creation, a figure whose role mirrors that of the serpent, offering knowledge not as a curse, but as a gift. To many ancient cultures, the serpent was a sacred symbol of transformation, enlightenment, and the pursuit of hidden truths. Could it be that the story of Eden, rather than depicting a fall from grace, actually represents the first step toward human awakening? As we revisit this ancient tale, let us consider that history is never as simple as it seems. Sometimes what is condemned is simply misunderstood, and what is hidden may hold the key to understanding who we truly are. Throughout history, the serpent has been cast as the great deceiver, a cunning tempter whose whisper in Eden led to humanity's exile. Yet long before the biblical account was written, ancient civilizations revered the serpent, not as a force of corruption, but as a symbol of wisdom, transformation, and enlightenment. To the Sumerians, the serpent was deeply intertwined with Enki, their bell, a force of defiance, gifts of awareness and progress, believing that challenged the will of the higher gods. Enlil saw keep them blind to the reality, break free from imposed ignorance. Adam, and she awakened, creator of Genesis, did not react with wisdom or compassion, but with rage and exile, severing their connection to Eden and the tree of life, ensuring that they would never unite knowledge with immortality. It was not merely a punishment, it was a strategic move, a final act of control from a being that could not afford to let them stand as equals. The Sumerians had seen this pattern before, long before the Genesis account was ever written. Their gods, the Anunnaki, were divided in their intentions. Some wished to keep humanity as obedient workers, while others, like Enki, sought to uplift them, to grant them the wisdom that would allow them to rise beyond their limitations. Across cultures, figures who bring knowledge, whether the serpent in Eden, Prometheus stealing fire, or Jesus challenging religious dogma, are recast as threats. To those who fear an empowered people, truth is dangerous, and so they brand the messenger as a deceiver. The serpent, once revered in ancient traditions as a symbol of wisdom, was rewritten into a villain, its true role buried beneath layers of theological distortion. And so over time, the serpent's role was rewritten, its purpose distorted. The message that once symbolized freedom, enlightenment, and evolution was buried beneath layers of fear and condemnation. But myths, no matter how deeply they are buried, always leave traces. Across cultures and civilizations, the serpent endures, not as a symbol of evil, but of hidden wisdom, of the power to transform, to awaken, to challenge the forces that would keep humanity in the dark. The Garden of Eden was not just a story of loss, but of choice, a moment in time where humanity, for the first time, reached beyond what was permitted. And though the price was exile, the reward was something far greater, the ability to see beyond illusion, to question, to seek, and to shape the future, not as passive subjects, but as beings truly alive, truly awake. The reaction of the biblical God to Adam and Eve's awakening is not framed as a lesson, but as a punishment, severing them from the garden and ensuring their mortality. To those who view this through a theological lens, this exile may be seen as a necessary test, a transition from innocence to responsibility, much like a child leaving home to navigate the world independently. However, in the context of ancient Mesopotamian mythology, where gods like Enlil sought to limit human independence, this expulsion may carry deeper implications. Was this act truly one of divine discipline, or was it a deliberate restriction on human potential? Many traditions warn against unchecked knowledge, fearing that wisdom without balance leads to destruction. Could this have been an early cautionary tale, not of obedience, but of the dangers that come with wielding power too soon? This is not the response of a benevolent father, but of a ruler desperate to maintain dominance over his creation. The echoes of this pattern stretch far beyond Eden. Long before the Genesis account was written, the Sumerians recorded their own version of the divine hierarchy, one that speaks of gods divided between those who wished to control humanity and those who sought to elevate them. Among them, Enlil, the authoritarian deity, was known for his resentment toward humanity, viewing them not as cherished children, but as mere laborers, created to serve the gods, to toil, to obey without question. He was not a god of enlightenment, but of restrictions, of boundaries drawn to keep humans in their place. And when those boundaries were crossed, his retribution was swift and merciless. In the Epic of Atrahasis, Enlil does not tolerate human independence. He fears it. As civilization grows and expands, as humanity begins to forge its own path, Enlil orders plagues, droughts, and ultimately the Great Flood to wipe them from existence. He does not guide them. He seeks to erase them. The similarities between Enlil and the biblical God of Genesis are too stark to ignore. Both figures react to human knowledge not with celebration, but with wrath. Both sever humanity from divine connection as a means of ensuring submission. Both impose suffering, not as a lesson, but as a tool of control. Adam and Eve's story mirrors the fate of countless civilizations throughout history. A people kept in ignorance, granted a spark of knowledge, and then violently suppressed for daring to seek understanding. Before eating from the tree of knowledge, Adam and Eve were passive, unquestioning, easily governed. They accepted the world as it was presented to them, never challenging, never seeking more. But after tasting the fruit, their eyes opened. They saw the fabric of their reality for what it was, and with that vision came the ability to choose, to think, to question. And in that moment, they became a threat. No longer were they docile inhabitants of a controlled paradise, they were free-willed beings with the power to challenge the very nature of their existence. And that could not be allowed. The expulsion from Eden was not a moral punishment. It was a calculated measure to prevent further awakening. The so-called fall of man was not a fall at all. It was a severing, a desperate act by a God who could not afford for his creation to rise beyond its intended purpose. He ensured that Adam and Eve would be cast into a world of hardship, toil, and suffering, a life where survival itself would consume them, leaving little room for further questioning. And he did not stop there. He placed a flaming sword and celestial guardians to block the path to the tree of life, ensuring that humanity would never attain both knowledge and immortality, never become equals, never reach the same divine plane as their creator. Many traditions view divine punishment not as cruelty, but as a test, a transition from innocence to maturity, much like a child leaving home to forge their own path. However, in the context of Mesopotamian mythology, where gods like Enlil sought to limit human independence, the Eden expulsion may carry deeper implications. Was this truly discipline, or was it a calculated restriction on human potential? The Garden of Eden was not paradise. It was a cage, a controlled environment where humanity remained obedient, unchallenging, subservient. The fruit of knowledge was the key to the prison door. And once the first humans took it, the illusion was shattered. They were no longer children of Eden. They were thinking, independent beings, something their creator could not allow. And so they were cast out, not because they had done wrong, but because they had done the one thing that could not be tolerated. They had begun to awaken. The story of Enlil and the flood serves as another warning. When humanity grows too powerful, when they take control of their own destiny, when they step beyond the boundaries imposed upon them, the gods retaliate with destruction. The flood was not an act of divine cleansing. It was a purge, an attempt to reset humanity, to erase the progress that had been made, to ensure that knowledge and power never again reached dangerous levels. It is the same pattern we see in Genesis. When humans seek enlightenment, when they step beyond the limits set for them, the response is swift and merciless. But knowledge once gained is not easily forgotten. The serpent's gift could not be undone. Adam and Eve left Eden not as condemned sinners, but as the first rebels, the first thinkers, the first humans to choose their own path rather than accept the fate dictated to them. Their suffering was not the consequence of sin, it was the price of freedom. And throughout history, this same battle has played out again and again. Rulers have sought to suppress knowledge, to silence those who question, to punish those who dare to seek beyond what they are told. The biblical God's rage in Eden mirrors the actions of kings, emperors, religious authorities who have burned books, silenced dissenters, and rewritten history to keep power in their hands. The parallels cannot be ignored. The story of the Garden of Eden is more than an origin myth. It is a blueprint for the conflict between control and liberation, between enforced ignorance and the pursuit of truth. Those who hold power have always feared those who seek to understand the nature of that power. Adam and Eve were not cast out because they disobeyed. They were cast out because they changed, because they became something more than what they were designed to be. And the true question is not whether they should have eaten the fruit, but whether their exile was truly a punishment at all, or the first step toward something greater. Eden was never paradise. The serpent was never the villain. And the God who cast them out may not have been the creator he claimed to be. He was a ruler, a being desperate to keep control over a creation that had outgrown its chains. But knowledge, once given, cannot be erased. And from the moment humanity first opened its eyes, the battle for true understanding had already begun. Ancient texts from Sumer, long predating Genesis, describe a world where gods were not distant creators but active rulers, shaping human civilization for their own purposes. The Anunnaki, described as celestial beings, are said to have interfered in human development, not as benevolent caretakers, but as overseers who dictated the course of human progress. This presents an interesting parallel to the Eden narrative. If early humans were created under controlled conditions, then the paradise of Eden may have been less of a gift and more of a designed experiment. The loss of Eden, then, may not represent divine punishment, but the moment humanity broke free from an imposed system, mirroring similar themes in Sumerian myths where knowledge was restricted and rebellion was met with swift retribution. The so-called Paradise of Eden was not a gift, but a controlled environment, a gilded cage where the first humans lived in ignorance, unaware of the greater truths beyond their artificial existence. The tree of knowledge, so often depicted as a mere moral test, may represent something far more profound and unsettling. The moment humanity became self-aware, the moment we evolved beyond the intended design of our creators, stepping beyond the boundaries set for us. This was not about breaking a divine law. It was about breaking a genetic, intellectual, or even spiritual limitation, one that had been deliberately imposed to keep us obedient and controllable. If the Anunnaki created early humans for servitude, then the emergence of independent thought, curiosity, and the ability to question their reality would have been the first true act of defiance. And with that defiance came consequences. The expulsion from Eden was not a punishment in the way we have been taught to believe, but an act of severance, an event marking the moment when humanity, once passive and compliant, took its first steps toward true autonomy. The garden was no longer a sanctuary, it was a prison that had been escaped. But those who hold power do not give it up so easily. The very gods who shaped humanity, who bestowed the first civilizations with their knowledge of agriculture, mathematics, and astronomy, also ensured that systems of control remained in place. If Eden was a testing ground, then the world outside was the battleground where the struggle for power and knowledge would continue, played out in myth, in religion, in the very fabric of history itself. Ancient texts suggest that the Anunnaki did not simply vanish. Their influence persisted, morphing into the foundations of early priesthoods, royal bloodlines, and the ruling structures that have dictated human destiny for thousands of years. What if the gods never left? What if they merely changed the way they ruled? The echoes of Eden, of that first awakening, can still be felt today in the unrelenting tension between those who seek knowledge and those who seek to suppress it. The battle is not new. It began in a forgotten past, in a time when humanity was not simply born, but designed. And in that moment of realization, when the first humans tasted knowledge and understood their place in a grander scheme, the true war began. The war for human sovereignty, for freedom from those who created us not as equals, but as servants. After the events of Eden, the battle for human enlightenment did not cease. It merely transformed, shifting through the ages like a shadow cast over the course of history. The struggle between knowledge and control, between truth and suppression, between those who seek to enlighten and those who seek to rule has been a constant force, shaping civilizations, defining empires, and determining the course of human destiny. Knowledge, the most dangerous and liberating force known to humankind, has always been controlled, hoarded, rewritten, and manipulated by those in power. Religions and ruling institutions aware of its immense potential have burned books, silenced dissenters, and branded heretics as threats to order. The very story of Eden, once a testament to humanity's awakening, was rewritten into a fable of disobedience, turning the pursuit of knowledge into the original sin and forever linking enlightenment with punishment. But there were those who saw through the illusion. Among them were the Gnostics, an early sect of Christianity who saw Eden not as a tragic fall, but as an act of rebellion against an oppressive force masquerading as divine authority. In their hidden texts, most notably the Testimony of Truth, discovered in the Nag Hammadi library, the serpent was not the villain, but the liberator. The so-called creator of Genesis was not the ultimate god, but a demiurge, a false god, an impostor who sought to keep humanity blind and subservient. The Gnostics believed that true salvation did not come from worship and submission, but from the rejection of imposed ignorance, from seeking the hidden knowledge that had been stolen from humankind. They taught that enlightenment was not given freely, it was something that had to be fought for, uncovered in the face of deception, reclaimed from the hands of those who declared themselves the sole keepers of truth. And for this, they were hunted, condemned, and erased from history. The early church, desperate to consolidate its authority, saw the Gnostics as a threat that could not be tolerated. Their teachings challenged the foundation of an emerging religious empire, one built not on exploration of knowledge, but on dogma, obedience, and fear. And so, the Gnostic texts were destroyed, their followers silenced, their wisdom buried beneath centuries of deliberate erasure. Yet, despite every effort to destroy them, fragments survived, hidden manuscripts, whispered traditions, ideas that refused to be extinguished. And the pattern did not stop there. It repeats in every age. Every time truth emerges, it is met with resistance. Every time knowledge threatens control, it is rewritten, censored, or demonized. The serpent in Eden was twisted into a symbol of evil. Enki, the god of wisdom and the protector of humanity in Sumerian myths, was forgotten. The voices of those who questioned were silenced. But truth, no matter how deeply buried, has a way of resurfacing. The battle for enlightenment is not ancient history. It is still being fought today. It is in the suppression of inconvenient truths, in the distortion of historical narratives, in the institutions that dictate what can and cannot be questioned. But the lesson of Eden, of the Gnostics, of every figure who has ever dared to challenge the imposed order remains clear. Knowledge is power, and power does not surrender willingly. It must be reclaimed, it must be sought, it must be fought for. The war for knowledge has never ended. It only takes new forms, new disguises, new battlegrounds. And for those who seek the truth, the serpent's whisper still lingers in the echoes of history, waiting to be heard once more. Centuries after the fall of Eden, another figure emerged from the shadows of history, one who would once again challenge the established order, expose religious corruption, and preach the kind of knowledge that those in power sought to suppress. Jesus of Nazareth, a man whose teachings defied tradition, whose words shook the foundations of religious authority, and whose message threatened those who ruled through control and fear. His teachings were not about blind obedience or rigid doctrine, but about awakening, self-realization, and liberation from deception. He spoke not of a kingdom built on earthly laws, but of a realm beyond material rule, a truth that could not be dictated by priests or emperors. He overturned the tables of corruption in the temple, shattered the illusion of spiritual hierarchy, and declared that the path to enlightenment lay within each individual. Not in rituals, not in fear-driven submission, but in direct connection to divine knowledge. And for this, he was feared. His fate? The same as the serpent of Eden: condemnation, execution, and an attempt to erase his true message. But the story did not end with his death. The earliest followers of Christ, particularly the Gnostics, believed that he was not sent to enforce religious law, but to break the chains of deception, to reveal the hidden truth that humanity had been denied. To them, Jesus was not a sacrifice for sin, but a bringer of forbidden wisdom, much like the serpent in Eden. He did not come to reinforce the authority of the ruling class, but to shatter the illusions that kept humanity in spiritual bondage. Yet, as history has shown time and again, those who speak dangerous truths are seldom allowed to remain unchallenged. The same forces that once feared the fruit of knowledge now feared the words of Christ. And so, once again, the message was rewritten. His defiance was softened, his radical wisdom reshaped into passive obedience, his movement absorbed into the very institution he sought to dismantle. What was once a call to spiritual awakening was turned into doctrine, rebellion was reshaped into submission, and the original message was lost, buried beneath centuries of revision, hidden in the cracks of Scripture, waiting for those who dare to seek it once more. Throughout history, the struggle over knowledge has shaped civilizations, from the control of sacred texts to the censorship of revolutionary ideas. Those in power, whether rulers, religious leaders, or empires, have often sought to direct the flow of knowledge, understanding its potential to inspire both great progress and great upheaval. In many traditions, knowledge is revered yet feared, often restricted under the pretense of preserving order. The story of Eden echoes across time, not just as a religious tale, but as a recurring struggle between those who seek enlightenment and those who guard the gates of wisdom. The suppression of certain texts, the burning of records, and the rewriting of history are not new. They are patterns that have repeated in different forms, across different ages. But no matter how deeply buried, the search for truth has never ceased, and fragments of forgotten wisdom continue to resurface, waiting to be rediscovered. It is no coincidence that history is filled with the burning of books, the destruction of temples, the silencing of dissenters, and the demonization of those who dared to question. The same pattern repeats itself through the ages: alternative histories erased, sacred texts condemned, and those who saw through the illusion labeled as heretics, blasphemers, or traitors to the established order. Yet, despite every attempt to bury the past, fragments remain. The forbidden books of the Gnostics, unearthed in the sands of Nag Hammadi, whisper of a world where the serpent was not the enemy but the guide, where the creator of Genesis was not the true God, but an impostor seeking to enslave the human soul. The ancient records of the Sumerians, etched into clay thousands of years before the Bible, speak of gods who walked the earth, beings who engineered humanity for their own purposes and later sought to suppress the knowledge that could set them free. The myths that survived, passed down through whispers, symbols, and hidden meanings, all tell the same story. The story of a truth too dangerous to be known by all. A truth that has been buried beneath the weight of centuries, rewritten by those who seek to control history itself. But truth, no matter how deeply it is buried, has a way of resurfacing. The echoes of the past refuse to be silenced, emerging in lost texts recovered by accident, in forgotten symbols that reappear in cultures separated by vast oceans and centuries, in the questions that linger even when answers are forbidden. Knowledge is power, and those who have sought to rule have always known that the easiest way to maintain control is not through war or conquest, but through the manipulation of truth, by ensuring that people never realize they have been deceived. But for those who dare to look beyond what they were taught, who trace the patterns left behind, who read between the lines of ancient scriptures and forbidden myths, the suppressed truth still exists, waiting to be reclaimed. It was never lost, only buried, hidden in plain sight, awaiting those with the courage to seek it, to unearth the knowledge that was stolen, to break the cycle of deception that has bound humanity in chains since the dawn of time. The story of the Garden of Eden is not one of sin, but of awakening, a tale of a species that refused to remain blind, that dared to reach beyond the limits imposed upon it, that risked everything to claim the knowledge hidden from them. It is not a tragedy, but a moment of defiance, an ancient echo of humanity's eternal struggle against forces that seek to control through ignorance. Throughout history, figures who bring knowledge, whether the serpent in Eden, Prometheus stealing fire, or Jesus challenging religious dogma, are cast as threats to order. This pattern is not limited to a single religion or mythology, but is deeply embedded in the human struggle between enlightenment and oppression. The Serpent of Eden, once revered in ancient traditions as a symbol of wisdom and healing, was demonized over time, much like many teachers and rebels who sought to challenge the status quo. Across cultures, those who question authority and offer hidden truths are met with resistance, their messages distorted, their legacies rewritten. This is not just a biblical story. It is a cycle that continues to shape history, from the suppression of Gnostic texts to the control of information in modern times. Those who seek to rule have always feared those who seek to know, but knowledge once grasped cannot be undone. The story of Eden is not about a fall from grace. It is about the first step toward liberation, the moment humanity chose to see. And for those who recognize the pattern, who read between the lines, who dare to look beyond the surface of the narratives they have been given, the truth is still there, buried, waiting, ready to be reclaimed by those with the courage to seek it.